Hi, I'm Michael Tamlin, CEO of Rakuten Kobo, with my co-host and producer, Nathan.
Hello.
And we're here to bring you our annual Staff Picks episode. This is where we hear from the most avid readers at Kobo about the best books they read this year, and we get to share that enthusiasm with you. Some of these books are new, some have been around for a while, but all of them left an impression, and you're going to hear all about it because despite the unseasonably cold December day on which we're recording here in the Kobo studio and on Zoom, we have absolutely zero chill. Welcome to our Year in Books. Tell us your name and tell us what you do for Kobo.
I'm Alicia, and I'm a content specialist.
What does a content specialist do?
I help the content sales team, so I help the booksellers.
All right. And what is the best book that you read this year?
The best book I've read this year is The Raven Scholar by Antonia Hodgson.
Okay, so The Raven Scholar, that suggests we're in some kind of fantasy bracket, but there are many different kinds of fantasy. What kind are we reading now?
So this is an epic fantasy mixed with a mystery, which is why it's so compelling. So you have beautiful, incredible world building, incredible characters, but a mystery to propel the story forward. So it takes place in this epic fantasy kingdom where there's an animal god pantheon. So there's about 7 or 8 animal gods, the raven god, the fox god, etc. Each person swears themselves to a different animal god, and that's how they navigate the world.
And is this focused around one main character? Do we have a group of people?
We do have a main character, but there is an extensive cast. Our main character is a member of the Raven clan, I guess you would call it. She's a Raven scholar. She loves paperwork, she loves reading, and she is forced into the role of a lead investigator when there is a murder during a ceremony to determine who the next emperor will be.
And so in the pantheon of animal gods, does that also tend to align to personality traits or skills or career focus?
Exactly.
Okay.
So the fox god, the people who follow the fox god are very mischievous and tricky. The people who follow the bear god tend to be courageous warriors. The people who follow the raven god are scholars.
Okay. And how did you come to this book? How did you hear about it? Who told you about it?
I follow a lot of booktubers on YouTube, and a lot of them were recommending it. I thought, oh, this sounds right up my alley. I love mysteries. I love fantasy. There's so many books. It escaped my radar for a little bit after that.
Right.
I saw it on the recommended section in Kobo. It's like, oh, that's great. What a lovely reminder. Bought it on my Kobo, forgot I had it, borrowed it from the library, and read it in an absolute fever dream of a day. I inhaled this book. It was incredible. And then I loved it so much that I remembered I had it on my Kobo, and me and my partner read it together.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
And so is it the kind of thing where you're spending a lot of time setting up the world and what goes on inside it, or is it easy to just jump in and know what's going on?
It's incredibly easy to just jump in. I find that sometimes with epic fantasy, you can have these incredibly massive worlds, which takes so much time to build up. I feel like Game of Thrones is a really great example of that. But for the Raven Scholar, I found that the world building, the information I received about the world was delivered to me so naturally, it really flowed extremely well with the story. I just kind of was able to slip right in.
And so if we look at the different kinds of fantasy that are out there, is this more of like classic epic fantasy? Does this veer more towards the romantasy side? Like where does this live?
There is romance in it, but I wouldn't classify it as a romantasy. I would classify it more as, it's so weird because you don't get a lot of fantasy mysteries.
Yeah.
But I definitely feel like it sits in that space. I feel like it would be perfect for people who are fans of Robert Jackson Bennett's books that have come out recently. The Tainted Cup is a great example of a fantasy mystery that's done super well. They would love this. So there is romance for everyone who loves romance out there, but there's also a very strong mystery.
And this is book 1 of a series. And is there only one book right now and we have to wait for the second one?
There's only one book right now.
No.
It was devastating when I found out because I didn't know it was a series. I'm getting to the end of the book. I'm like, wow, they don't have a lot of time to wrap this up. And then I got to the end and I realized.
And so as you're reading it, is it hitting your expectations of what you're hoping for in a book like that, or did it throw some curves at you and surprise you?
when I was reading it, I was so completely immersed in the world and the characters. I Is it weird to say that I had no expectations? I was just so happy to be in that space. I was so excited to see what would happen next. There's so many twists and turns that keep you guessing. My jaw was on the floor at least 4 times while reading this book. I inhabited this world. It was incredible.
And do we know how long we have to wait for the next one?
No, we
Oh,
don't know.
wow.
There's no release
Okay.
date out yet.
Okay. So this is like
This is my
we're doing
torment.
this old school. Like
Yeah.
we just have to muscle it out possibly for years
It's a
until the next
lesson
book
in
shows up.
patience, and this will be good for me. The Raven Scholar by Antonia Hodgson.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
So my name is Terrence, and I am a author engagement specialist on the Kobo Writing Life team at Kobo.
And what is the best book that you read this year?
So the best book that I read this year was the novella "The River Has Roots" by Amal El-Mohtar. Yeah, absolutely stunning book.
And tell us a little bit about it.
It's hard to start with this one. I think the easiest way to describe it is it's Amal's take on the murder ballad. But she twists it around. So if you know like traditional kind of folk tales, murder ballads, it's usually about some poor woman being murdered by her lover or something very tragic. But
Hmm.
in this book, it's a story about two sisters kind of confronting the traditional murder ballad tale and turning it on its head in a very beautiful, very poetic way that I really enjoyed.
Talk to me about the style. Like what's what are we getting into when we pick this up?
Oh my God. Well, if anyone has read Amal's other book, which was written with Max Gladstone, I feel like everyone knows the title of this one. This is How You Lose the Time War. It blew
Yes.
up a couple of years ago.
Such a good book.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely amazing book. Her writing is just so poetic, so thoughtful, very very grounded while also being magical. This book has a lot to do with grammar and the magic of language. That's a key part of it. So I think that is really, really portrayed effectively just in the very bones of her writing.
And so if you were going to try to put this into a category, are we looking at something that is more mystery, more fantasy, more literary fiction? What shelf are you putting it on?
I have it on my fantasy, my SFF shelf. It's
Yes.
definitely very steeped in fantasy, but it does have that really beautiful literary flair to it. I mean, that can be said about a lot of fantasy books too. There's always some beautiful language work being done in a lot of them, but I think you could comfortably put it on either shelf.
And you've called out beautiful language a couple of times,
Mm.
and people always repeat what they care about. Is that a thing that you really look for when you're looking for your next read?
Oh, absolutely. I love, it doesn't matter what the book is about, though I am often drawn to fantasy and literary fiction. But what really draws me into any story is like, what is the author crafting with their words? Like the
Mhm.
shape of the words, the sound of the words. Obviously, I'm not reading it out loud, but it's out loud in my head, so to speak. So yeah, like just what can the author do to make the words themselves come to life beyond the meaning? Like the musicality of it is important to me.
And is this kind of typical of the books that showed up in your reading diet this year?
Oh, for sure. Yeah, yeah. I read a lot of really, really literary fantasy, I would say. I also read a lot of books by Patricia A. McKillip.
Hmm.
She was an amazing fantasy writer in the from the 70s until the 2020s, actually. I think her last book came out in 2016. And yeah, just another author who, if you like Amal El-Mohtar's stuff, you'll definitely like her stuff as well.
And how did you find out about this novella?
So Amal has a long literary history of publishing short stories and poetry, and I'd actually read a few of her short stories before even reading This Is How You Lose the Time War and then this novella. So I've been aware of her for a while. So when I saw that this was her first solo longer prose publication, I was like, oh my God, I have to get a copy of this. I actually own it on my Kobo. I own a print copy and I own the audiobook. So I have all the formats for
The
this
true
one.
sign of fandom, the multi-format purchase.
Yes.
And for people that maybe don't read novellas as often,
Mhm.
so a shorter work, how did you feel when you got to the end? Did it feel like a perfectly enclosed work, or were you wishing for more?
I thought it was perfectly enclosed. I think that's something that, you can't say about every novella for sure, but I actually love the novella form because I think authors, when their intent is to write a novella, they know that they have this very limited space, right? Like I would say
Mhm.
that this one is probably around 30,000 words. Um, so being able to tell a complete and satisfying story in that short of a space, I think is really important and definitely something that she pulls off with this novella.
And so if you were recommending this book to somebody else, like what's another author or another title that would maybe bring you to this one?
Um, I feel like I'm going to recommend one of her short stories actually, and then I
Uh-huh.
can recommend another author. So she has an amazing short story called The Truth About Owls that was published in 2015. It's still available to read online.
Hmm.
So if you want to get a taste of her writing without diving into one of her novellas, that's definitely a good one. And then I think I would also recommend again Patricia A. McKillip, who I mentioned before. I would recommend actually her first novel called The Forgotten Beast of Eld, ELD,
Hmm.
which was published in 1974. Another very literary fantasy piece that combines, similarly to Amal, folklore and poetry with a completely kind of original take on magic, on the fantasy tropes we all come to know and love. Definitely would recommend her.
So one more time, give us the name of the book and the name of the author.
The River Has Roots by Amal El-Motar.
Thanks so much, Terrence.
Thank you.
Tell us your name. Tell us what you do for Kobo.
My name is Mark Steen, and I'm responsible for global partnerships with lots of device sales in there.
With a side of devices. Tell us about the best book that you read this year.
The best book I read this year is Obvious Atoms by Robert R. Updegraff.
What was it about this book that made it your best of the year?
There's somebody I follow on Instagram, Rory Sutherland. He's a Brit. He's always entertaining.
Yeah.
And he recommended this book, even though it's over 100 years old, just about the staying power of it. And he didn't expand too much about it, but he's like, it's a quick read. You'll see that it's dated, but by the end, you'll know why it's still on these lists.
And so what's it about?
So it's about somebody in the advertising business, and I'm not even sure if it's a true story or not, but just the way that this person goes about things is refreshing.
Mm-hmm.
And I found that it gave me some ideas to ponder on afterwards. That anyway, it was an impactful book in a sense.
And so was there a takeaway that you can pull out that really jumped out for you?
I think the person does his homework. He does his reading. He does his field work.
Okay.
He tests the products that they're going to be advertising. He visits the stores and so on. And through all of this, he comes up with pretty obvious suggestions that it's called Obvious Atoms, but in a sense, these are things where they're obvious once you've done your homework.
Mm-hmm.
And so I just have a deep respect for people who take care of their knitting, are dedicated, and in the end, I don't think you need all these miraculous, amazing ideas. Sometimes the solution is right in front of you if you just did your homework.
So it sounds like as much as it's about advertising or about marketing, it's about a mindset, like a mindset that you could have in your life that you could apply to anything.
Absolutely. It's not an advertising book per se.
Right. And is it like big book, quick read? Like what time commitment do you have to put into it?
It's a quick read. Actually, I had forgotten my device on a work trip and ended up finishing it in 2 or 3 sittings one afternoon on my phone.
Uh-huh.
And I don't know how long it took me, but it was a quick read. It was just a matter of an afternoon. And but a very impactful one.
And this was a book that was published like at the beginning of the last century. There must be like style and tone things that don't sort of mesh with like how a book would be written today. Did it take long to get past that, or did you just like kind of get in the groove of it after a little while?
I had been told that you can notice that it's 100-year-old book, so
Yeah.
I was prepared for some of the quirks in that regard. But as I said, it's still very relevant, especially kind of in this world of rush, and hot takes and things like that. I think it's just a good grounding to take some time, do your work, and not maybe be intimidated by some of these big problems we have to solve.
Right.
I think some of these things get a lot more simple if you take your time. Obvious Atoms by Robert R. Updegraff. 1916. I think it's in Kobo Plus, but otherwise, again, it's free. So I'm not making Kobo money with this one.
Tell us your name and what you do for Kobo.
My name is Jenna Can, and I work on the business operations team as a trust and safety analyst.
What is your favorite book of this year?
My favorite book was called Alchemized by Sen Lin Yu.
Tell me a little bit about it. How did it grab you?
So it's a very emotionally intense and gory book, but it is a dark fantasy about an alchemist who was a healer during a war against necromancers. The book opens after the war where the necromancers have won. They have our main character Helena as a captive, and they believe that she is the last member alive from the eternal flame. They also realize that she's missing memories that may hold information they need about the resistance.
Okay. And like, tell me kind of the mood of it, the texture of it, lots of different kinds of dark fantasy out there. How would you describe this one?
I don't think I've ever read a book before that has shown what loneliness feels like quite like this does. It has a lot of realities and trauma of war. Mm-hmm. The war of the book is not a background. It is very much the point. Yep. So it's very gory and sad. It's very emotionally intense and just sad.
And this author came out of fan fiction.
Yes.
Do you get some of that flavor to it?
Kind of. So I did read the original fan fiction before I read this. I would say that is not my recommendation. If you're interested in the fan fiction afterwards, by all means. But I think it was harder for me to separate the two because I was trying to figure out who the characters were as I was reading it. And she made a lot of really good changes. So I could see it, but I think that's because I already knew. I think if you didn't know, it does really feel like a super original work. It was based on a magic system, and that is gone. There's not magic in this fantasy. There is an alchemy system. Mm-hmm. There is necromancy. There is pyromancy, but there isn't magic. So that felt just so unique and its own, and it kind of gives an industrial gothic sort of vibe, which is not at all like the fan fiction at all.
Is this a category that you've been reading in for a while, or did this just drop into your reading life this year?
A little yes, a little no. I typically read fantasy and sci-fi. That's kind of where I like to go. And I'll read anything. My go-to is recommendations from friends. I love when a friend tells me about a book because then it's a guaranteed someone I know I can talk to about it when I finish it. I do read quite quickly, so I'm always curating which friend is reading what book so that I can have a conversation about it. And I have a couple friends who are quite picky. And one of those friends, Emily, she messaged me about the fan fiction and said, this is the best thing I've read this year. And so I read the fan fiction. And then we were both equally excited to read Alchemized when it came out.
And the fan fiction was gigantic, right? It was a huge
Massive.
work. Okay. So it was 400,000 words for the fan fiction. And then she kind of did a rewrite, adaptation, rethinking of it for commercial publication.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
And it's that made it longer because they didn't have the background of the fandom to support things that we would already know. They had to build that world, so it ended up being longer.
And generally, would you say good world building puts you in that environment well?
Oh yes, yeah. And I think that's part of what was lost on me the first time I read it, because I blasted through the book 2 days when it came out. I had to know everything, and then I had to read it again slower. Mm-hmm. That beginning initial 200 pages or so that was slowly introducing this world, I was still trying to find the connections from the fan fiction, so that was lost on me, which is why I said I would recommend reading this one first. The book is Alchemized by Sen Lin Yu.
Jenna, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Carmen Basrab, and I'm the product manager for search at Kobo.
And what is the best book you read this year?
This one was a hard one for me to pick, but the best book that I read this year, which didn't come out this year, but it's still relatively new, is called The Repair Shop: Life in the Barn, Inside Stories from the Experts.
And tell me a little bit about this.
Sure. So I'm really into DIY and repair and learning how to build things and such. And I discovered that there is a BBC show called The Repair Shop, which a lot of people bring old antiques to and very curious items to, and you get to see people repair them. And you get to spend a lot of time with a lot of the experts in the barn and learn about them. And once I finished all the episodes, because of course I binge watched it, came to Kobo and I was like, I need more. How do I read more about these people? How do I learn more about their expertise and how they got into things? And I was delighted to find that we actually have a couple of books by them. And so this is the one that I really enjoyed because it really goes into the different types of people who work in the barn. So a horologist who repairs clocks, a leather worker, ceramics experts, a bookbinder, and a bunch of different people like that. And it tells how they got into the craft, what their favorite tools are, and what their most impactful things were that they were able to repair for people.
And as a DIY book, it seems like they fall into a couple of categories. There are the DIY books that are aspirational DIY, like here's how a clock expert repairs a clock, or there is like functional DIY of giving you techniques and tips that you can use on your own projects. Where did this fall in that spectrum?
It's a little bit of both, I would say. It does give you some tips and tricks in the little sections about each person about repairing their specialty.
Mhm.
So what tools that they would suggest for doing leather work or repairing ceramics and what's safe, what's not safe to eat if you're going to repair things and such. But they do also give you tricks on how to take it and get it professionally repaired. But I think the part that I like the most about this book is it has a message inside um, that follows along the classic British theme of make, do, and mend. And there is a quote in the book that says that the greenest thing that you can do is to keep your old things in working order. And they really discuss that in each chapter of the book, and each person really gets into that theme of, they're not making it brand new. They're taking something that has a lot of feelings and memories to people, and clearly it does because this item has been broken, but the person who brought it in still can't bring themselves to throw it out. And they fix it and they try and restore it to a point where those memories are really happy. And I found that it really changed how I look at some of my stuff. And I've gone through, having to take care of a parent's estate after they passed and looking at the memories and things and thinking, do I throw it all out? Do I keep some things? And what I ended up keeping was a couple of broken things. And I was able to take some lessons I learned from the book and from the show to be able to fix a couple of my own things, to be able to keep them and not throw them out and still have those memories. So it is a DIY in a way of here's some tips and tricks, and you definitely learn some methods that they use and some of the tooling, and that allowed me to go online and find what I needed to repair the stuff.
Mhm.
But it was a really good lesson, and it's okay to take apart things to fix it, because that's the very first thing they do. They take everything apart.
Yeah.
I don't know how they don't lose all the pieces, but it's one of those things where it's like sometimes to fix what you need to do, whether it's a memory object or a project you're working on or something, you have to take it fully apart
Mhm.
and take your time to put it back together. And I think that's what I really like about this is it taught me that you're not breaking it if you take it fully apart. Just take pictures of what it looked like before you took it apart. Um, and like you can restore things. You don't have to throw things out. You don't have to waste things. You can put your own touch on it and try and repair it.
And is this part of a string of books in a similar theme that you've been going after, or is this like a single standout title in the year?
Yeah, so I have this thing that I like to call ADHD hobby roulette, in which case I pick up several different things depending on the theme. And this year I spent a couple of months sewing my own bike bag for traveling back and forth to work. And so I have a lot of DIY books right now that are in the theme of sewing and how to create my own patterns and work with sailcloth and such, because why would I start with an easy project? But it is sort of a theme that I'll look at stuff and think, I wonder if I could do that. Which is kind of dangerous to a personal budget and storage space. But there's a lot of things online, and that's what I really enjoy about the DIY books and that sort of reading is it is that gentle encouragement of you can learn these, you can figure this out, you can use a couple of different resources, the books along the way, and then you can go to YouTube or follow a craftsman that you read about and learn how to do that stuff. Because I think that having those craftsmanship skills is really important, and it should be a skill that we keep up, like that we don't want to lose. Like being able to sew by hand or restore books. We're a bookseller, and yeah, we sell ebooks and audiobooks and digital books, but we're all book nerds and we all have a lot of print books and stuff. So it was really cool learning and reading about the bookbinder that's on the show. He has a whole chapter where he talks about how he restores books, how he got into it, and he's like one of the biggest bookbinders in the UK and does bookbinding for like top prize award books and such. And I followed his tips to be able to repair my grandmother's recipe book, and that was successful.
So thank you so much for this selection. And we can't wait to see what ADHD Craft Roulette brings up for next year's recommendation as well. Thanks so much, Carmen.
Thanks. The Repair Shop, Life in the Barn, The Inside Stories from the Experts by Jane Dowley.
My name is Mike Bowles, and I work in the IT department for Kobo.
Tell me the best book that you read this year.
The best book that I've read this year is The Red Knight. It's part of the Trader's Son cycle. There's 5 of them.
And are you a frequent fantasy reader?
Yeah, so I read primarily that. Sometimes I'll skip to science fiction periodically,
Okay.
and I have read a couple of mystery series as well, but primarily fantasy.
So what is it about this particular series that really caught you?
Uh, it's got just about everything. It's kind of like a Camelot story with dragons,
Hmm.
heroes and villains. One of the best parts of the story is that uh, when all the adversary, like throughout history in this world, adversarial conflicts would come up and the humans would fight against this group and so on and so forth. But to fight this or to defend the earth against this one massive evil, they all came together and worked together.
And how are you led into like the world building? Like, is it do they lay it all out for you at the beginning, or are you sort of piecing together how this whole place works as you go through the story?
It pieced together throughout the story, actually, and you really didn't know all the parts until you got to close to the 4th book.
And lots of characters, a small crew.
So a lot of characters, and one of the things that annoyed me with this book it was in the very beginning was that they would skip from one person to the other. Each chapter would be a different person.
Hmm.
So for the first book, there's pretty much 20 characters being laid out, and they all had their own chapters.
Okay.
And it got kind of tedious because I really wanted to find out what was going on with this one person, but then the next chapter would be somebody completely different. But the second book, that kind of calmed down a little bit.
So it takes some time just to get all the characters in your head and have kind of have that mental map ready as you're going into the second book.
Yeah.
Like, is there one character that you're really paying attention to throughout, or are there a couple that stand out?
Yeah. So the main character's name is Gabriel. He's also known by as the captain, and he becomes other things throughout the book.
Hmm.
And he's actually quite fascinating. He's somebody that is very young and unexpected as
Okay.
far as becoming a leader goes. He uh, bring he so he knows about the whole massive problem that's going to come around before anybody else does. So he starts up this mercenary band um, to pretty much fight it and ends up uniting all the peoples and all the different lands together. with his mercenary band to fight against it.
What's the time span that we're looking at? Like, is this kind of, all one journey, all one quest, or are we looking at like years and decades?
So no, it's actually just a couple of years.
Okay.
The amount of stuff that goes on in that couple of years is pretty fantastic. It's huge.
And with 5 books, like, do you feel like you're being pulled along from book to book? Is it one of those things that you just have to do all in one go, or can you kind of set it down and pick it back up again?
Good question. But when I start a series, I don't skip to another series in between.
Hmm.
So I read it right through. And luckily, this series actually did pull me all the way through each book. So I mean, I wanted to start the next one as soon as the first one, or as soon as that I was done the other one.
And is it fairly definitively closed in book 5, or is there the possibility of more out there?
Yeah, there's definitely a possibility of more, but not with. Yes, there is definitely a possibility of more. I don't want to spoil it. So
Okay,
yeah.
got it.
Miles Cameron is the name of the author, and the first book in the series of the Traitor Sun cycle is The Red Knight.
Thanks so much, Mike.
You're welcome.
Tell us your name and tell us what you do for Kobo.
I am Deandra. I am the content sales lead for North American eBooks.
And what was your favorite book of the year?
Now that's a tough one as a bookseller to pick, but this year I went with She's a Lamb, exclamation point, by Meredith Hambrock.
And what was it about that book that pushed it to the top of your list?
It's been on my to read list since it came out in April. It has an amazing cover. But I was like, I want to maybe put it in my horror best of year list. But I couldn't tell if it was actually horror. So I said, you know what? I'll read it. I'll make sure it's horror before I put it in. It's not horror. It's not. It's mislabeled on Goodreads, which, that's a reader's issue, but
Okay.
it's not actually horror. It is fiction, psychological thriller, maybe a little bit, but it's definitely not horror, and it is so good. It blew my expectations out of the water. It went onto my best of fiction list for the year, so it made it there.
Yeah.
I could not put it down once I started reading it. I thought I would read half of it, make sure I knew what genre it was going in. No, I needed to know. I needed to follow this character's complete descent into delusional madness, and I did.
And so this book, we have a woman looking after child actors for a stage production of The Sound of Music.
Yeah.
And so what do we know at the start of this book about this main character that tells us that things might not be entirely, healthy?
So she is an actress, and she really wanted the role of Maria in Sound of Music. And spoiler alert, she did not get it. But they put her in charge of childminding. Might not have been the best business decision on their end. You kind of don't know throughout the book whether the character is telling the truth or if it's just her version of the truth. You get little snippets that make you go, "Oh, I don't think this woman is all there and isn't really aware of the world around her and has made up her own kind of version of it." But you also get other snippets where you're like, but maybe it is true. Maybe this thing she believes is actually accurate. So you spend the whole book kind of second guessing yourself, second guessing her. It also makes you go, am I this delusional about anything? Wait, have I ever felt this way?
Mm-hmm.
And you feel bad for her at certain points where you think oh man, someone needs to give this woman a hug or something. Like someone needs to sit this woman down and talk to her. But then other times she does things that you're like, oh, nope, don't feel bad for her at all. So it just was really well written and just engaging from the start. I recommended it to my book club at the last minute because I was reading it as we had a meeting, and everyone was like, "Oh yeah, I saw that book. I've been it's kind of the same thing as me. Like, oh, it was on my list, just haven't had a chance to get to it." They all read it, which is already rare, and then everyone came back being like, "This was amazing. I'm so glad you recommended this. This was perfect." So yeah, I highly recommend it. I think it's a bit of a sleeper hit, and I'm glad to have a chance to also, promote it and give it a little bit of extra love this time of year because it was something else.
Like, is it taut and psychological? Is it creepy and menacing? Like, what's the tone that we're getting through
Honestly, it's quite funny.
Okay.
For the content matter, it had me laugh out loud at a few points.
Yeah.
It is a bit more literary fiction, I would say, than like thriller-y.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, it's just you're kind of following her rambling brain. So you're
Okay.
just in this character's mind. And yeah, it's like it was quite funny for the subject matter and how dark it can get. You don't ever feel like, oh, this book's like really depressing and upsetting. And like
Right.
even when upsetting things happen, you're still kind of laughing a bit up until towards the end.
And the title She's a Lamb,
Uh-huh.
pulled from a lyric in The Sound of
Yeah.
Music. Is this also a book that one could read if one was a Sound of Music fan?
I think so. I'm like not even a Sound of Music fan, but after this, I was like, I can't wait to see the production in Toronto. A friend of mine is in it, and I was like, you have to read this book. I think it's what you're going through, but hopefully not to this extent.
Keep an eye on the childminder.
Yeah, exactly. I was like, are the kids okay? No, but I did have to preface that with saying to her, like, I don't actually think all actors are like this. And even the author in her like final author's note is like, to all my actor friends, I don't believe you're like this. This is just where my brain went, but you're all lovely and I love you all.
I think that's fair. I think that's
Yeah.
totally fair.
Yeah.
And this is Meredith Hambrick's second book. Did you read the
Mhm.
first one?
I have not. Now I want to.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm a fan now. I'm a big fan. She's a Lamb! Exclamation point by Meredith Hambrick.
Tell us your name. Tell us what you do for Kobo.
Obed Mumtaz, and I've been with Kobo for just over 3.5 months. And I work in finance, mainly in content operations. So I look after the balance sheet reconciliation, making sure all the sales tie back, making sure everything in our GLs are essentially the numbers are accurate and they are what they are, and basically just not something out of the air.
Amazing. Very important that they be, accurate and not out of the air. Tell us what the best book was that you read this year.
I read Project Hail Mary this year, so I feel like that's the best book. I've read like a few. I'm part of on Fiction Book Club, so we read every month from various categories and from various genres, but mostly fiction. Yeah. So Project Hail Mary was recommended by one of our members, and when I read it, I was forced into a sci-fi kind of environment. And when Dr. Grace wakes up from that coma, he does he does one of those pendulum experiments and realizes that he's not on the planet. That
Yeah.
really got me hooked, and I was like, oh shit. Because I've done the pendulum experiment in high school, and the numbers always reconcile to 9.8 meters per second squared. That's like the
Right.
gravity, the speed of gravity that we experience here on Earth. So that's pretty amazing.
It's such an interesting book. So, Project Hail Mary, the main character wakes up. He doesn't know where he is. He seems to be in, as you say, he does this experiment that lets him know that he seems to be on a spaceship of some kind, but he doesn't know anything else. And so, is this the kind of book that you would normally read?
Not really.
Okay.
I haven't read sci-fi in a while. I
Right.
mostly read like suspense thriller or something along those lines. But reading Project Hail Mary, I went back. The very next book that I read after that was The Martian. So I went back to the genre and started to explore more. The Martian I really liked because this is somehow a possibility in a world of fiction that you can essentially leave someone behind. But if we're talking about The Martian, NASA could just say, "Hey, he died on Mars," and just forget about him.
How much of the appeal is in the storytelling? How much of the appeal is in the science? Like, what are the things that catch you when you read these books?
I feel like science is a big thing. The concepts that I studied in high school, so I had a major in physics and I was really good at chemistry as well.
Mm-hmm.
Moving to accounting was just something that I wanted to try out. I didn't know that I'd end up working in it.
Yeah.
But essentially, I know the basics of scientific principles and the scientific method and how something gets essentially made up and how the laws are defined.
Yeah.
So science is a big thing, the component, and how they explain it and how they break it down for someone who hasn't been close to science in a long, long time. That sort of gets me, really. The storytelling is the second most important thing, because without a good storyteller, I mean, you can do a lot of things without it, but still, it doesn't really jive, you know.
And with the way these books are structured, it's almost like, with each challenge that the main character runs into, like both in Project Hail Mary and in The Martian, the book that came before it, it's it's almost like you're getting a little like physics project or chemistry project or biology project as they're trying to figure out what to do next, and they're so good at explaining the science behind it. It's fantastic.
Yeah, essentially they're explaining it to a teenager or someone who hasn't held a science book in a long, long time.
Yeah.
And that takes me back to one of the uh, I think it's a very famous quote, but I can't remember who quoted it. That if you can't explain it to a toddler, you don't understand it well enough. So I feel like that's the that's the concept behind the book, and that's how
Yeah.
they take it from there, which is like amazing, amazing.
And it's also worth reading right now because we know that the movie version of Project Hail Mary is coming up in 2026. So this is your chance to read the book before the movie comes out.
It was only when I bought the book on the Kobo store that it said that this is going to be a live action starring Ryan Gosling. And I was like, okay, perfect timing.
And regardless of when you're listening to this, we always endorse book first, movie second.
I learned that the hard way. I saw all of the Harry Potter movies,
Yep.
and then I started reading the books, and then when I went back to the movies, I was very disappointed. Project Hail Mary by Andy Weir.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Tell us your name and tell us what you do for Kobo.
My name is Nathan Maharaj. I am the producer and co-host of this show and director of content marketing for Kobo.
Tell us what the best book is that you read this year.
The best book I read this year is the last book I finished this year. I had a different plan for what I was going to bring on this show.
Oh, wow.
And then I happened to crack open, and I can't remember why, but I cracked open Tori Peters' Stag Dance, a novel and stories. And it is the best thing I read this year.
Wow. So this is like a late, like last minute choice.
This
you threw
is
out the plan.
Somebody recommended it. Somebody raised it as like on radio or podcast somewhere. Somebody said it was actually really good. And I thought, oh, okay. I guess I'll give it a shot, but I thought it was just like leftovers because she published Detransition Baby, her novel, in 2021. We had her on the show. She was amazing. And I think that book is amazing. And that was the book I picked that year as the best thing I read.
Yes.
And I thought, oh, yeah, okay, she's written other stuff, but like that was all on the way to becoming like a novelist, like, you know,
Yeah.
and I sung her praises in those terms. It was like, this is a literary force. All that's between her and the Nobel Prize is just writing a few more books, so the Swedish Academy can just say, "Yep, you got it."
Okay.
But oh my God, Stag Dance!
So tell me about why Stag Dance caught you in the face of everything else you read this year.
It really was the title story, which is the novel embedded in it. The other stories are good. The other stories are very good. But Stag Dance knocked me flat. It is the story of lumberjacks, pirate lumberjacks. They are cutting down trees they are not legally entitled to.
Okay.
Over 100 years ago, maybe like 150. It's very old timey. There's people are not communicating by radio, and so this troop, this band of pirate lumberjacks, with this one character in the middle. There's the boss. Fine, there's the boss, but our protagonist, the person that we're with, is Babe Bunyan. It's a nickname, and the nickname comes from Bunyan because he's enormous.
Okay. Of the Paul Bunyan style.
Of the Paul Bunyan Yeah, exactly. That so he is seen as a living legend for being enormous. Babe, because he's hideously ugly and it's a mocking nickname.
Okay.
And Babe Bunyan is out there working with these men in the cold, hacking down trees, drinking, stinking, and it's a horrible, brutal thing. And at one point, the boss says, "We're going to have us a stag dance," and the men are like, "What's a stag dance?" And so a stag dance is the dance that will happen after a period of courtship. Courting who? Well, there's these little triangles of fabric that get distributed among the men, and if you want to be courted, you pin it to your belt, your waistband, and it sort of takes the place of kind of an anatomical feature of the female persuasion.
Okay.
And so you hang this little triangle of fabric, and that is a signal that you wish to be courted. And of course, most of the men make a big joke of this.
Mm-hmm.
And but Babe is like, oh, I kind of want that. I kind of want to be courted. And this is what knocked me flat is Torrey Peters writes like, I imagine what it must have been like to be gay before, like they say, like Oscar Wilde invented how to be gay.
Mm-hmm.
Like, what was it to be a man who loves other men before, like when it was a time when you couldn't even speak of it? We couldn't find the words for it. All you knew is your body wanted a thing.
Right.
And you were left with no language for it. And Torrey Peters writes like nobody thought of the concept of transgender. Nobody can, it's like gender's not even really, it's not even a thing. And so she writes into this space that's just like this rich soup of emotion. And you get this sense of longing from this character of just wanting to be wanted, of wanting to be beautiful, of wanting to be regarded, and appreciating that there is a femaleness about that, but not necessarily wanting to be female per se.
Mm-hmm.
And this is what knocked me. This is the thing that knocked me over was how this brief novel found words to speak about things apart from the words we already have. It just left planet Earth and said, no, I have ideas of my own, and embedded us in this rich, like 19th century prose. If someone had said this was a lost Victorian novel, you would have had to start a proper, like you would have had to write a doctorate to disprove it, because it's such a magic trick.
And so it sounds like not just creating a story about relationships and longing and gender from first principles, but actually building it up from like elemental sensation and like nervous system responses, rather than calling on any previously used literary device.
Absolutely. I think it's critical that that these lumberjacks are far removed from any kind of society and are their own society, because it opens a palette for her to bring in all kinds of conceits that these men are experiencing a temporary kind of society. And so there is that freedom to be and do what you might not otherwise, but we also don't have the strongest sense of what they would do in their daily life anyway. Mm. So we're very unmoored, yet as I say, it's as grounded as any like Victorian novel.
And so going back to Torrey Peters' first, the first book that we interviewed before, Detransition Baby, in 2021, a very contemporary novel.
Yeah.
Did you see connections between the two? Were there like common threads to it, or is it really like sui generis?
I would say it's a spiritual relationship. In that Detransition Baby, what knocked me over about that was kind of the same thing, where Torrey Peters approaches her subject as if there are no rules. She can say anything. She can do anything. There is no morality that she's answerable to. There are no conventions. She's going to call it like she's going to see it. She's going to do weird Tory stuff. I think she said exactly that when we talked to her, that it's all about weird Tory stuff.
Yeah.
And I love weird Tory stuff. Like, I've realized the feeling in my body when I was reading this book was like, I didn't know how thirsty I was till I had a sip of this prose.
Amazing. And the Stag Dance is the novel that sits in it. As you said, there are stories packed around it. How are the stories?
The stories are incredible. The first one is Infect Your Friends and Lovers. It is a science fiction story, a work of speculative fiction, if we're being high-minded about it, about some trans women who have access to some scientific technologies, and they unleash a virus, and this virus renders everyone hormonally genderless. We're all forced to pick, and there's this like, and society collapses in a variety of ways, and everyone's got to decide: do I want to pump myself full of testosterone or estrogen, or some kind of blend?
So you don't just have to pick; you have to make it happen.
It becomes a Mad Max kind of thing because this supply is not endless. So you have the situation of and because these are people who lived through it. We're like, this isn't like a thing that happened in the ancient past. So we have people who remember when they could get estrogen and can't, and people who were on testosterone before, but now they can get a lot of testosterone. And so there's like, it's like you take the gender spectrum, and instead of landing at points in between, it's expanded out in each direction as well.
Okay.
So that's one of them, and that one's kind of wild. But there's this tender one called I think The Chaser is the title, which is again about like adolescent sexuality and furtive touches and sexual gratification, and it again does that Tory thing of like, these are things for which there are customarily no words, and no words are ever spoken, but she can commit it to the page.
And just catching that moment in your life.
Yeah, exactly. Stag Dance, a novel and stories by the incredible Tori Peters.
What a great pick. Thanks so much, Nathan.
Thank you, Michael.
And so concludes another Kobo Staff Picks Roundup. We hope you heard something that made you add to your own wish list, or maybe nudged you to make a hold at your library. And if you are listening to Kobo in Conversation for the first time, thank you. We hope you will follow the show and catch all of our episodes. We have so many great ones in the bank, and we have new great things coming up. Some really good stuff, especially from this past year. I recommend the conversation that I had with Miriam Taves, because that was just a highlight for me this year. Wishing you a great year in reading. I'm Michael Tamblyn.
And I'm Nathan Maharaj. Thank you for listening.